Steve Wozniak, welcome to the Bob Rivers Show. How are you?
Oh, hi. Good to be here talking to you.
A sad day, a tough day, one you knew was coming, right?
Well, we anticipated. It was like when my father died. It was a long time, and we all knew that he was going to die. So it wasn't like immediate trauma. But, the only thing that makes me cry is when I think back to some of the good times that Steve and I had. And, just in young days when we were so naive and we didn't really know what we didn't know. And I can never go back and just sit down with him and converse about them and smile together.
Yeah.
And so that hurts a lot, and how important he was to all of us, to the world, to technology, and our future is the thing that everyone knows.
The two of you founded Apple. You guys were obviously best friends at the time, and you stayed reasonably close, didn't you? Even though he was off doing his thing and you were off doing yours.
Actually, we were best friends for like 7 years up through some early Apple years, but he went off into running a company, and I wanted to stay in the shadows and just do engineering. So we kind of took different directions at some point during the Apple career and remained friends, but not close friends. So I remember him for my connection to him is largely the Apple products and the quality and how good they are. But it was really nice to be around him and hear him talk when he left and started Pixar and did Next and all that. And it was sort of nice to have gone through that whole history as well as the early days. I mean, the early days you can never replace your high school friends,
Right, and you, who you were on our show a few years back, and we had a wonderful long conversation with you here in Seattle, which of course is filled with techno nerds, lots of your kind of people, and we're grateful that you took our call this morning. I imagine you're being besieged and deluged with people who want to talk to you. I wanted to ask you a question.
You would never believe what it's like to get thousands of emails that you can't even read.
Right.
And phone calls. The phone doesn't stop ringing, and it's just it's an awful lot to handle. And right here at my house, did a lot of interviews this morning on national press. So it's tough. I'm going to get nailed by that, but I really do want to speak the good memories that I have of him as a person.
All right, that's what I want to.
I mean,
that's what I want to ask you about, Steve. Go ahead.
Yeah, he cared about kind of being like a fair person in life, but being very disciplined in running a business the right way. And he really grew, especially in his time away from Apple. When he came back, he was very disciplined, always taking the right steps for the company, marketing, operations, technology. And he had a very strong feeling that when you have one mind that's really overseeing a product, and doesn't give in to everybody else's little whims of what it should be, that's when you get the excellent products. And that would even apply to our start with the Apple II computer.
Right.
Because it was really only one person it was being made for.
People wonder, I wonder, what drove him, even after he faced the incredible stress and the illness that he faced, to literally work probably up until the last day he could. Do you have a sense of that?
Well, at prior times, I don't explore people's personal lives, but there were other incidents that made me feel, from the early days that I knew him to times when he left Apple, what he talked about his purpose in life was, and it was to really create the new steps that move mankind forward. And so and every product was pretty much like himself. He's putting himself out to the world. The fact that you've had an incredible success more than anyone could ever imagine wasn't enough to quit. So after he had his first pancreatic cancer and it was curable and the liver transplant, look at the products that we've had even since then. They've been very important in our lives. So now that he's gone, we've got to say, what comes next? And I believe that the magic is still in Apple. Steve planted such strong seeds as to the way the company is organized and its culture, its history, what people believe about it, and the huge people believe so much. I believe the magic is still there.
Every day,
and I think that everybody's going to remember Steve, forever.
Every day in America, Steve, somebody starts a little pizza parlor or maybe an electronics shop. They start their own little company, Your little company that you and Steve Jobs started has gone on to be the biggest company in America. It's worth more than any company in America. Does that surprise you?
Very, very much. When you start a company, you don't expect that, I will have to say. Even Steve called up and his Apple started getting that kind of prowess once it was no longer just computers, but now it had iPods, and then the iTunes store, and the retail stores were so successful, and we were kind of moving up this ladder of I don't know, financial prominence and exceeding Microsoft in value or Google. You know, once we got up into that ballpark, he would call me, and he was just so amazed. Did you ever think it would happen? He would say to me. And I'm more dry. I just think, well, the answer's obvious. We didn't think that we thought that, we were going to be a leader in this technology revolution, but how big it was going to be in our life, couldn't foresee at the start.
Steve, we asked you this a few years ago. We're on with Steve Wozniak, remembering his friend and business partner, the founder of Apple. Steve, you just did a keynote presentation called Today's Science Fiction, Tomorrow's Science Fact. So before you go, what can we look forward to tomorrow, and what would Steve Jobs have loved to have seen happen that's about to happen?
Well, one thing is, Steve almost always thought about computers in less the technical terms of what's in the computer, even if the computer's an iPhone, for example, or an iPod. Less what's in it and more what is the effect on a user. How does a user relate to it? How does a user bond to it? How does a user fall in love with it? And so every time these products get a little more humanish, rather than it's a machine that we humans use well, it's like another human. Every step that Apple took that was successful got closer and closer to that formula. So I would predict Apple being sort of the leader, the direction of the world for technology, that these machines are going to become more like human friends, and eventually you may love them more than your human friends. You'd much rather spend a session talking to your iPhone and getting the answers back from it, and it shares your feelings about the world. It knows your personality. It knows what jokes how to speak to you. And I really think that that's going to be an eventual direction way off in the far future.
Wow.
In the near future, Apple introduced the iPhone 4S. And, and by the way, everything's in the pipeline for the next couple of years has strong Steve Jobs, marks and fingerprints all over it.
Right.
So the iPhone 4S had Siri, the system where you kind of talk to it in human terms, ask it the sort of questions you'd ask other people, and you get answers. You don't get web, links that might get you to the answer. You get the answer, and that's what people want. And I think answer engines taking over search engines, that's not too bad of news for Google. I think that's sort of the next phase.
Steve Wozniak. Steve, thank you very much, and all the best to you, and sorry for your friend's loss, or your loss, I should say, and all of our loss.
Okay,
right?
well, Steve is still here in Apple. Just remember that.
Right, he's got stuff in the pipeline for 2 years. That's an interesting observation. Thank you, Steve, and when you're in Seattle, please stop in.
Okay,
Take care. Steve Wozniak.